Hi, I'm Terry Neves. Have you read The Secret and some of the other books out there on the law of attraction and find that it doesn't work? Are you in the same place in your life you were a couple of years ago when you read The Secret? Does that mean that it doesn't work? Well, not necessarily. It just means that it doesn't work for you. I'm going to tell you a little story. Now make sure you watch the whole video, because in this story you're going to find out why it doesn't work for you and how to make it work for you. And at the end of this video, I'm going to share something with you that will change your life. Back in 1995, I was a dance teacher at Arthur Murray. And of course I had hair back then too. Now, I also taught Reiki classes in my spare time to bring in a little extra money. Reiki is a Japanese form of healing. I also studied different things like meditation and hypnosis to understand how the conscious mind and the subconscious mind worked. And I studied quantum physics as well. Now that's better known now as the law of attraction. I had a wife, a 2-year-old son, and a 7-year-old daughter from a previous marriage. And we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. My daughter came over on the weekends, and of course she had to sleep on the couch since there wasn't very much room. Well, I was in a car accident, and thankfully I wasn't hurt, but some of the ligaments in my hip were stretched, which kept my hip from staying in place. Well, this caused a lot of pain when I tried to dance, so I had to stop teaching dance. Now, since I already was teaching Reiki classes, I decided to put my focus on teaching my classes and try to make enough money to survive. Luckily, my wife had a job. And my wife was also involved in teaching the classes with me. So we started advertising in a local paper, and that helped give us more classes to teach. We also started teaching classes in meditation and a few other things as well. Now, one of our favorite sayings at the time was, "You create your own future and walk into it." Now, that's referring to what's now called the law of attraction. Well, I finished teaching a class one night, and I went home, and I was sitting at the kitchen table thinking about things. And I started thinking, I keep teaching everyone that they can have anything in life they want just by creating it in their minds. Yet I was struggling to make ends meet. Did I really believe this myself? Well, yes, I believed it. I felt it was true. But if it was really true, then why wasn't I a millionaire? I mean, if I truly believed this, then I should be a millionaire. Well, what I realized was my conscious mind believed it, but my subconscious mind must not have believed it, otherwise I wouldn't be struggling to pay rent. Well, at that moment, I knew what I needed to do. So I went and grabbed my cassette recorder, and I recorded my own meditation tape. And every night after that, I listened to this tape. Well, next day I was working on my ad for the newspaper, and I realized, it'd really be nice to have my own computer so I could lay out my ad myself instead of relying on someone else to do it for me. Well, a couple of days later, I met this guy, and somehow we started talking about computers. Well, he let me know he had this old computer he wasn't really using, and offered to sell it to me for really cheap. Well, I told him I'd gladly take it, if he could allow me to make a couple of payments. So I bought the computer. Well, now I had a computer, and after I figured out how to use the thing, well, I kept hearing everyone talk about this great new thing called the Internet. Well, I decided that I needed to check this Internet thing out. So I went to Best Buy and I took a look at modems. Well, they let me know that there was this new high-speed modem that just came out, and it was twice as fast as anything out there. Well, that night I left Best Buy with a top-of-the-line, ultra-high-speed 14.4K modem. I set this modem up, and I got an Internet account, and I finally logged on to the Internet. Wow, that was amazing. I saw so much opportunity there, and I didn't see anyone who was really taking advantage of the opportunity that the Internet gave. Well, my wheels were turning. I figured it would be great if I could teach my classes on the internet, or just have my class manuals on the internet and let people pay for access to the manuals. I mean, wow, I thought that was a great idea. But there was a little problem. You see, I didn't know anything about how to make a website. So I went to the bookstore and I bought a book on HTML and I learned how to make a website. It wasn't really that hard at the time. So I put up my website. Then I realized that somehow I needed a way to charge for access to my website. I did a little research and figured out that I needed to learn how to do CGI programming to make it all work. Well, they were using this programming language called Perl, so I needed to learn Perl. I went to the bookstore, and I didn't see any books on Perl, so I went to the information desk and asked if they had any books on Perl. They told me, yeah, the Pearl Harbor section's over on aisle 9. I said, no, I need something on Perl programming. Well, after I explained what that was, they looked it up on the computer, and they took me to find the books. Well, I was in luck. There were 2 books available on Perl programming. So I took a look at one of them, and wow, that was a very thick book. I skimmed through it, and I realized that this wouldn't be quite as easy as I thought. I mean, I'm a dance instructor, not a programmer. Well, I turned the book over, and I looked at the price. Wow, then my jaw dropped. $50 for a book. Well, I didn't have $50. Well, actually, that wasn't true. I had $50, but if I spent it, I wouldn't have rent money, which was due in about a week. Well, as I was walking out of the bookstore, that small voice in my head said, hey, you really need that book. You'll figure out how to pay rent somehow, but you really need that book. So I went back and got the book. I got home and started learning. And when my wife got home from work, she saw me reading this huge book and said, what's that? I said, well, you remember when I told you I wanted to try to sell our classes on the internet? Well, this is what I need to learn to do that. And she said, well, good luck with that. I said, oh, and by the way, we're going to be about $50 short on rent this month. Well, why is that? Well, this book costs $50. Well, I thought she was going to get mad. She just looked at me and she said, well, if you really needed it, then we'll figure out some way to pay the rent. We always do. I thought, wow, a wife that trusted me that much to stand by me even though I just spent the rent money. Now that's a wife. Well, I went to work. It wasn't easy learning how to program. I spent many nights staying up till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Other nights I didn't even get to bed at all. But somehow I still managed to make the time to listen to my tape. Well, I finally got it all figured out. I was able to put my website up and sell my courses on the internet. Of course, there was no way to charge credit cards securely over the internet at that time, so people would have to send me a check in the mail. Well, after a few days of waiting with no luck, I realized I wasn't really getting that many visitors to my website. So I went to all the search engines and submitted my website. I mean, it took a whole week to finally get listed on the search engines. But when I did, well, I still only got a few more visitors to my website. I figured, there had to be some way to get more visitors. Well, I went to other websites and I contacted the webmasters and asked them if they'd put a link to my website on their web pages. One of the webmasters emailed me and said, since you're selling access to your website for $10, I bet you'd get a lot more websites putting your links up if you gave us some of that money. I thought, wow, that's a great idea. So I emailed him back and said, hey, give me a few days to figure out how to track where the visitors came from, and I'll get back with you. Well, I went to work again, and I figured out how to track everything, and I sent all those webmasters another email. I said, hey, I'll pay you $5 if anyone comes from your website and pays for access to my courses. Wow, I had dozens of webmasters who wanted to take advantage of this offer. So they all signed up to display my link, and suddenly I was getting over 1,000 visitors a day to my website, and I just started getting sign-ups like crazy. A couple of days later, I went to check the mail. There were like 5 letters in there from people I didn't know. So I opened up those letters, and they were all checks for $10. I thought, wow, this is actually working. Well, the next day I went and checked the mail, and there were about 20 checks in there. The next day I went, opened the mailbox, and that thing was filled with checks. I mean, checks from all over the world. Well, the next day I was really excited to see what I'd find when I opened that mailbox. So I opened it up, and there was nothing in there. I thought, oh wow, I wonder what happened. Then I realized it was Sunday, so I guess I'd been working too hard or something there. So Monday came around. I went to the mailbox and I opened it. I looked in, and again, there was nothing in there. Then I looked a little closer, and I found that there was a little key in the mailbox. So I figured somebody must have sent me a package. Well, I used that key to open the big box on the side of the mailbox, and then when I did, there was this huge cardboard box filled with checks. I took it upstairs and I counted how many checks were in there. There was almost 1,000 checks in that box. I tell you, it took us all night just to open all those checks and fill out the deposit slips. Well, the checks kept pouring in day after day, and by the end of the month, I realized I had to pay all those webmasters for sending me all the sign-ups. I spent 2 days handwriting over 300 checks to pay all these webmasters. Now, before I sent the checks out, I needed to make sure there was enough money in the bank to cover the checks. So I called the bank and asked, what my balance was. And after they told me, I said, are you sure? She said, well, yes. Is there a problem? I said, no, there's no problem. I just know we had a lot of foreign deposits, and I want to make sure that everything cleared. She said, well, yeah, everything cleared. So I asked her again, so, how much was the balance again? There was over $68,000 in my checking account. I had never even seen that much money before. And it all started because of this little tape I recorded. Well, checks kept pouring in, and I knew somehow I had to figure out how to take credit cards securely over the internet. Well, it took me a couple of months, but I finally figured it out. And once we were able to take credit cards, sales quadrupled overnight. I mean, there were $20,000 days, $30,000 days, and even a few $50,000 days. Within 4 months, my wife and I were millionaires. Within a couple of years, we were bringing in over $20 million a year, all because of this little tape. Well, that was quite a few years ago, and since then, my wife has passed away. The other day, I was cleaning out the garage and going through some old boxes filled with pictures and stuff, and I came across that cassette tape. I knew at that moment I needed to share this tape with anyone who wanted it. So, in memory of my late wife, I'd like to share this tape with you. Now, I know that most people don't have cassette players anymore, so I converted it to MP3 format, and I was able to take out all the static, with some software. So if you'd like a copy of this tape, just enter your name and email below, and I'll send it to you. I only ask that you use this tape to create the life that you've always dreamed of, the way that we did. Namaste.